Good evening, dear viewers of Smart 24 TV and on channel GoTV 394. My name is Dr. Joseph Tindeba, and we are in this talk show that is the POLICON. We discuss politics and economics. We interrelate them to see how they can be able to be part of the transforming agenda of our society. Together with us, we are blessed this evening to be with the Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Byakatonda. Sir, kindly introduce yourself better than myself, how I've done it.
Thank you, Joseph. And of course, this other colleague on the panel. Yes. I want to thank Smart TV 24 for hosting us and really for getting interested in a number of economic discussions that have paved. I've had a lot of bearing on the listeners. And of course, I would like to say it is very important because deriving from the lessons we picked from COVID-19, I think this is the way to go. We need to step up our resilience. And I would like you to keep it up on that tune so that we can have more of these discussions that can enrich our country and the economy.
Thank you, sir. Okay. You're welcome, and we'll discuss more. We also are blessed to be with you, Madam, as you've been really coming to be part of this discourse of your socio-economic transformation agenda. Madam Choma and Dorothy, please kindly greet the viewers.
Good evening, viewers, and those of you watching us on Smart TV, Smart 24 TV, and GoTV. Like Doctor has said, my name is Dorothy Chomhanji. I am a business development consultant with Asset Profiling and Management Company Limited, and I'm very happy to be here with the Honorable Member of Parliament. Yes, we hope to have a very good discussion.
Thank you. Once again, I appreciate you, all of you, from the private sector of workers. You compose a very big section of Ugandans, because the bigger population of Ugandans, they are private workers, not necessarily those who are in the public sector. So it is our deliberate, really, invite to have you here, and we believe that we will benefit from either the analysis and the experience that we may share here to shape the discourse of our, discussion. Honorable, our Member of Parliament for Workers, the Workers MP, Dr. Byakatonda Abdallah. I last met you when you were, mobilizing the workers, of which I'm part of them.
Seriously.
From the University Professional Academic Staff Union.
Yes.
We were at the East Africa Labour Office there in Amongo.
It's a pleasure.
And of course, we gave all the support to you.
I appreciate
that you can be able to represent us.
I appreciate it. And
I will take the message that when I invited our Honorable MP, he came.
Yes.
And that means, indeed, you are an MP who have work. This day they say, Olina worker. So you have work. So it's a pleasure to be with you. And our topic of discussion is analyzing the impact of workers' MPs' representation in Uganda. And we are a bit widening it to East Africa, East African Legislative Assembly. And the representation we target to the socio-economic well-being of the citizens, because every political move, as we are discussing, part of it being politics and economics, POLICON, it must be for the welfare of the people. For us as Smart 24 TV who drive business, we believe that the politics of the country, even those who represent us, should always remember that the existence and the well-being of the citizen can only happen if the economics, the livelihoods, what is in the pocket, your income, and so forth. So we bring this topic of discussion in my short preamble at a time like this, when our economic situation as a country and all over the world, there are many challenges, there are many concerns being raised up. And some, like Uganda, a certain section of citizens, they have felt, discontented that the skyrocketing of prices, and those who are doing business is becoming a bit difficult for them, and then they shift the burden in terms of the economic instability. They also shift it on the citizens, to ensure that they can be able to have work. And that is a section of the people you are representing, both in the public sector and in the private sector. And those in the private sector, there are those who are informal. And then finally, it's such a great host, opportunity to host you. They all finally feed into, are you doing something? Are you workers? So you are representative of everybody, and you come on board specifically to look at how the citizen that must be in the work chain, the working chain, to be able to contribute to the economic growth of the country, also to improve their socio-economic well-being. We go back to our Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, and by 1995, you will help me to recall, as its promulgation, it considered representation of different category, interest group, and also gender, of course, the female and the male, that's the women representatives. And I believe the framers found it ideal to make sure that we can have representation also of a section of people specifically to concentrate on how possibly we can, stimulate and steer a working, atmosphere, and possibly come up with policies that are to help whosoever is working to feel comfortable in the country called Uganda. And among of which, to just give a background, we believe there are a number of changes that you've been able to tackle to enable workers. We appreciate you, sir. There is those of your predecessors and yourself where you are building on. We understand there was a minimum wage bill, and finally, I believe now whether it is already assented, you will tell us. And then there was also the Nssf.
Midterm access.
Yes, the National Security Social Fund, which also is dealing on the saving of workers and also to feed into what we are talking about. And we're also talking the informal society, which also feel they need to be catered for in terms of taking their views. We also know that East Africa Legislative Assembly, the East African community, which has traced its history since 1962, and after some challenges, then it a bit, halted its operations until 1999, and it resumes again around 1999 up to today. The East African Legislative Assembly Act of 2011 continue to talk about the representation of the 9 members of parliament that should include in the representation considering special interest groups from the member partner states, including the workers. I will not ask you much about it, but we also advocate for it. So while now we come to this talk show, it's my pleasure to let us, look at the impact of this representation to the socio-economic well-being of citizens. And you are the only right person, in addition to this voice also from the independent voice,
to
the consultant. So you're welcome, take us through. You'll have 10 minutes through, and you also have 10 minutes, we'll continue our discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Doc, for the very important topic. I think this is very interesting, and I think highly relevant.
Yes, sir.
Because you see, we should not take everything just for the sake of it. But it's important really to look at some of these key topics. And I would say this is at international level.
Yes, sir.
You see, workers, for any country to develop, we must also appreciate workers as a key human resource. And I must say that right from the Industrial Revolution, workers, I think, were undermined. And then a country that does not actually take workers as a priority is bound not to develop. I think this is a very key important component. And suffice to mention, this is why the NRM government came up with the review of the Constitution, which really came up with affirmative action to look at this workers as one of the core groups. And in so doing, we have had a lot of milestones in terms of the legal infrastructure, because I think issues of occupational health and safety were looked into, and an act was promulgated and assented to. The Employment Act, because this was actually way back in the early 1960s. Now we have the Employment Act, which actually stipulates a number of, a number of issues pertaining to workers. Of course, the other one is the Nssf Act. Of course, social security is very important for any worker environment. You can look at the worker money compensation. All these, a number of laws. And then suffice to mention, we have now started the concept of looking at the importance of workers in terms of organized labor and I think that one under Article 29(1)(e), that's when we came up with anybody can form, is free to associate, including the right to join unions. So that one is very important. And when we talk of organized labor, it is a prerequisite to a number of things.
So you mean even like the border can have is it a union?
They have a union actually.
Oh.
Just one, but they have
Wow,
a union.
that's good.
The union of cyclists, drivers and cyclists, and allied workers union.
Okay.
Actually, they have a union, and I think we are trying to ensure that we arrange them under the private sector and ensure that they come as a common voice, so that they have all issues that affect them are addressed.
Yes, sir.
Then, of course, when we do that, this came up with a number of other legal instruments. For example, when we talk of the public service negotiating consultative and dispute settlement machinery of 2008. Here, what we envisage is that one, the workers must be able to negotiate. They must be able to handle disputes. They must be able to handle issues that affect them in terms of policy. I think these are very, very key issues. Under this, under that mechanism machinery, we have come up with what we call, enshrines itself, what they call the National Negotiating and Consultative Council. This council is housed in the Ministry of Public Service. And the machinery has one Ministry of Public Service, the PS is supposed to sit there as a member. Ministry of Local Government, PSO is appointed person, standing appointed commissioner. Then the Ministry of Finance is a member, Ministry of Justice is a member, and the Ministry of Local Government is a member. So these now should be able to help us with have the machinery to negotiate. Because I think what we realize is that one, in our case as Uganda, we should be able, while others are working, we should be able to run. So this machinery is trying to ensure that at least they bring negotiation. Such that when the asset priority consultants are looking at how to invest, where they're investing must be actually adequate. People should be aligned with the mission. People should be able to look at development. So that at the end of the day, we pick up. When we do this, it can help us really come up with a number of. For example, the key outputs to this, when it started in 2008, it was operationalized in 2013. By 2015, we had come up with the first collective bargaining agreement between the workers of Uganda and the government, and of course the employers, under the tripartite arrangement. So this is the mechanism that we are trying to ensure that we implement. So when you hear about the workers advocating for their rights, it should be under this collective bargaining agreement. When you hear about issues of salary enhancement, it should be about this within this collective bargaining agreement. And of course, this enshrines all the laws. For example, the workman compensation should handle. For example, if Dr. Joseph, you are not sitting properly, sitting posture, there's no aeration, if you know that you say, no, this person is up to him, there should be mechanisms to see that at least all these are addressed. That at least if there is a problem within the law, you are able to be eligible for compensation. All these are laws that are very relevant. So, on this issue of whether there is relevance, I must say workers MP are highly relevant because we are one, court of first instance. Two, we are the technical people because we will the experience in the areas of workforce. You find that one, issues of vicarious employment, issues of lack of safety and health in the workplaces are very key. Issues of salary harmonization, issues of welfare. Because in this law we are talking about now the issues that we can negotiate on. Issues that we can negotiate for. These include salaries, maternity leave, issues of structural adjustment, and the like. Then issues that we can consult on. We can look at issues of welfare, bereavement, and a lot of things. So all these are very key. And of course now what we're realizing is that one, much as we have a lot of legal infrastructure in place, the Constitution talks about a number of things. But I think we have not internalized the core things, which now becomes our role to ensure that at least we keep reminding government, urging government that this is how we can proceed. For example, recently, I must tell you that one, we, of course, as workers, as leaders, when at the advent of COVID-19, we realized that at least people didn't have where to go. They didn't have any options. We didn't have resilience mechanisms. So you find that, and that's when we realized that we said, okay, look here, government, can we really ensure that we put towards something to help our workforce? And this target group was among the savers. So when we did this, I think it is what has been enabled us through dialogue to achieve the amendment, the Nssf to enact midterm access. And in so doing, we came up with a number of provisions. For example, now the savers who have saved 10 years, they have saved up to, they have attained 45 years of age, they can actually access up to 20%. And now it's still our role to ensure that we urge them not to put it to waste, but put it to full use. So that, because the midterm access is once in a lifetime. So when you have accessed it, maybe the consultants like the asset prioritizing can actually do what? Can help them to ensure that they invest. And I think we are doing this, and so far so good, people are learning. Because without the resilience mechanisms, it put people in a lot of stress, a lot of anguish, because I think the economy had locked down. You either leave or you leave the economy open. That was the principle. And because His Excellency the President wanted us to leave, he had no choice but to lock the economy through a lockdown, which was imminent. So everybody was not sure when could it open. So this now means that, one, we need to step up our resilience. We need strategically to ensure that at least we come up with a number of things, including now what we are doing as workers, MPs, as leaders. We are now trying to come up with expert-led discussions on issues pertaining to workers. And then the other thing is ensure that at least we implement the current illegal infrastructure. What are these? Is it vicarious work? That is a challenge. Is it lack of salary harmonization? How do we negotiate? And of course now, when we do this, if we put this into place and in perspective, it means now we can actually have a international minimum standards. And this is very key. Because for example, under ILO 87, ILO Convention number 87, we are now looking at ensuring that at least we give people an opportunity to negotiate, an opportunity to discuss. There should be an opportunity for arbitration. There should be an opportunity for dialogue. And Uganda being one of the constituents of ILO, we are bound by that regulation.
There is a question I have for us as we continue the discussion, and we appreciate for giving us the background of the legal framework. You are a legislator and indeed the policy maker, and we understand very well there is the existing ministry, which is the Ministry of Labor, which connects up to the district, especially the labor officers. You know, at the district level, the labor officer. And it is very good, the way you brought it to the knowledge of the viewers, to know that even in the informal sector, they are encouraged, at first was not happening, to form associations. And I look at what indeed the representation that you are offering this country of workers, it even cross-cuts to different groups, including agricultural-related associations and cooperatives, and which I believe there is much more needed, and through you, I just raise up a voice on behalf of others to be able to rally together, to coordinate, to have a mechanism, whether through the ministry, to enforce, to coordinate, make sure that we have workers who are registered under their informal sector groupings, whether they are house girls, whether they are, you know, we call them house girls? House helps, yes, I wanted a collection. House helpers.
Or domestic workers.
Domestic workers, that's what I wanted. And also, you look at like those who are in the agricultural sector, coffee and so forth. It looks to be at times the way I know we are a work in progress, but there are some of the issues to emphasize. I would not have taken into this what I want to say. The coffee, this deal which was relating, the good thing worked on it, the Vinci, company, which was to take a monopolistic, to have a monopolistic advantage. And for them, straight away, they take over our coffee growers, and then they will be always ready to sell to them. How best can we be able to protect our workers in all sectors?
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. That's a very good question. But you see, when somebody is going to the labor ward, even if she has produced 10 times, you cannot take it for granted. So what the point I'm making here, I think people are bound to make mistakes. You cannot say Doros has produced maybe 10 and let her just go the labor road alone. I think the point I'm making here, we need to ensure that who are the stakeholders? What is their interest? I think this was missing. Because one, you see, there was somewhere when I was reading, I think somebody was a lady speaker of the Parliament of USA. She was talking about family planning. Then later she was saying, I think it's dangerous to take pills. So I think people, the whole thing ran short of ideas. So when we are talking about, we are saying Uganda is a liberal economy. And we are talking about liberalization. I think that has been the advocacy. So again, you cannot actually bring something which you are saying again should be a monopolistic thing and have one person. Is that in the interest of the stakeholders? Who are they? Are they involved? Yes, because I think that the process I think which you are following really follows according keen interest to every person, so that at least the participation is involved. So this, I think, we found it wanting in a number of areas as a parliament, and that's why we resolved and said, I think, anonymously, across all the political divines, across all the walks of life, I think we said, no, this one, I think, is not good for Uganda. And it is upon that background, we urged the government to do away with it. And as it was coming, I think we had even some other motions, because what was available was that we had what we call the International Coffee Organization. Yes. I personally, I think, had moved a motion saying, because there was a withdrawal based on areas that I think the withdrawing sought was valid. But then we realized that we could have subjected to a SWOT analysis. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities and the threats? Because one, we realized that I think we need the standardization, we need the advocacy, we need that grouping, so that we think collectively within the global arena. So when we remain alone, I think these are the challenges that we are likely to face. And I think this is something we need to advocate for and ensure that maybe we can talk of reinstatement. So I think in whatever we are doing, in whatever we do, in whatever programs, I think we must cascade key aspects that are very important, that can actually enhance sustainability, that can enhance good performance, that can enhance the standards. If you do not actually follow the proper criteria, then you are bound to make mistakes. Because, for example, in the coffee deal, this person really have capacity to ensure that sustainably you can handle the coffee program. Now, what is the stake of government? After all, who are the stakeholders? Because for something like coffee, I think it is you, Joseph, you, Dorothy, as an individual farmer, who will take a decision to say, I want to invest in coffee. So it implies that when we dictate the terms, then it means even the sustainability of the enterprise can actually collapse, can dwindle. So these are very key components that we looked at and considered it.
Thank you so much. Yes. That was great. We applaud you and keep it up. Yes. If you can accelerate the momentum, we will believe that parliament is for the people. And in this way, we also go on what you mentioned. You talked about the Nssf Act. There are concerns arising from the population. There are many who would want even to be mobilized, and they join also in the saving chain rather, the saving, the financial, the savings, but there are some skeptical questions that are still lingering in the minds of many. You save your money if you are suffering from cancer because you have not attained cancer, meaning, these serious sicknesses, illnesses. It's like a gap still being identified, and through your deliberations, maybe a certain time everybody will be happy with that all. And you cannot access this money. I am married, and my wife is in a critical situation where I need this, let's say, improved medication, which is beyond maybe the center for, and I don't have anywhere else to get the money, either my very wife or myself. I'm in a dangerous kind of critical situation of sickness. Do you think that these gaps are really, don't they need attention, serious attention? And finally, why are people asking about this act much as you've made a step forward? You are indebted to the last drop of your blood. That's the meaning that maybe it is to sell yourself or maybe you die. and you have saved, your fund, and you have your 20 million, but yet they are taking you to Ruzira. And this very social security fund, which is supposed to give you that social protection, that, the condition to get that fund, it can't allow. Honorable educators, don't you think something is needed to be done better than that?
Thank you very much. I think what I would like to say, social security per se derives itself from a number of conventions. There are about over 26 conventions and about 33 recommendations. For example, in these recommendations, I think what is agreed globally, there are about 9 branches that govern the social security. Of course, for example, when we talk of one of the branches, we are talking about when somebody has reached mandatory age. 60 years, you should be able to access your money. There is the recommendation 102. Even when somebody is in the maternity, I think is liable to get this money.
But for us, the law is not accepting.
Of course, now it depends on the member country. We are talking about, for example, so and so is going out of the country, and you're supposed to return, you're supposed to access money. Terminal illness, you're supposed to access money. Okay?
Any
bereavement.
Yes, illness.
God forbid you have lost a life, your family should be able to access the money. And a number of them. So I think what is important is, one, most of these things are supposed to be handled administratively, because at Nssf, there's what we call the board. The board is at the policy level. Now, recently, I think what we changed was that previously Nssf was the Minister of Finance, but now we have taken all the responsibility to the Minister of Gender on issues of appointment of the board, appointment of what, it has now got shifted to. Now, finance will remain with the role of just guiding on investment. But what the suffice to mention is that, one, of course, the state must regulate most of these things. Yes. I think this is why they were saying, oh, this midterm access, how does it really work? There are a lot of schools of thought, as I was saying, when we allow midterm access, the fund will be depleted. But then, of course, under dialogue, we had to talk to government, His Excellency the President. When we dialogued, and we came up with a number of figures. We realized that when we allow midterm access under that figure, under that other category of people, the beneficiaries, so we think, oh, over 13 trillion. But now this one would require maybe over 13 trillion if we accessed. No, we went back to the drawing board and came up with figures. What we realized that out of the over 13 trillion, we only needed about 1 trillion to cover this aspect. And I think so far so good, it's working. But that suffice to mention, this allows other components to move on. Some people are attaining the mandatory age, let them access their money. Some people are terminally ill, it is proven by their medical practitioners, let them access money. Of course, as a board, the regulator, the fund manager, they have the criteria. Somebody will go to the doctor will say, this one is terminally ill, this and that, so can actually access. This one has been out of employment at the age of 50, but for 2 years, you can access the money. This one is living in the country, can access the money. Of course, but of course, the implementing, the constituent of ILO, the member state, has its own mandate to at least look at all these branches. For example, if you say the maternity, people are in maternity, it's a very dangerous thing, let's actually make it as one of the components for people to access money.
Can that be handled administratively? I'm pleading for the women.
That's the point I'm making.
Yes, yes.
Of course, now that one can also be a component. Like when we said, okay, let people have midterm access, and the government actually ensure that maybe we need it by an amendment of the Act, since it was not provided before. We had to move and put in section 24, where now we've even had to add some other components which were very key. For example, previously, I think they were saying there were a number of people, maybe a minimum of 5. That's when you can actually maybe be allowed to save. But now we are saying even the domestic worker that my sister Doreen here has should also save, even if, as an individual, should also be entitled to.
Thank you so much.
So I think these are some of the components that have been cascaded into the law and which we should actually see. But overall, I think I would like to encourage Ugandans, especially the workers. It doesn't do any harm to save with Nssf because the threshold one alone is the biggest. Because first of all, In Uganda, they are deducting 5%. Then the employer is giving you 20%. So you're getting 15% per month.
They added there is interest on it.
Yes. Yeah. Then now, of course, the idea of investment was also good. Then you find that I think one time it even went up 12%, adding to your saving. So it means that at least it is one of the less risky areas.
Honorable, thank you for the encouragement. Yes. Please don't go for betting, go for saving. Yes. And it is a very critical inspiration I'm giving the viewers. Some of our sons and daughters over there, they are saying, no, let me put my money in betting. And the betting centers are opening. Of course, that is too risky. And yet this one is for your safety. I appreciate for your first submission. We'll be going on through with you. And we'll also be looking at the minimum wage and also how best we can reach out to every corner of Uganda to make sure that a worker in whatever way is protected. In union, in whatever way is protected. I will be coming back to you in that way. Please, you're welcome, our consultant in business management. Please do also for our business people over there because we want to see our economics promising the country for stability. You're welcome, madam.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Tindeva. Thank you very much, Honorable Byakatonda, for that very enlightening submission. First of all, maybe let us go back to what our question was. The impact of the workers' MPs representation
in Uganda and East Africa, by the way.
Yes, for social and economic well-being of the citizens. So basically what we are trying to analyze is the workers' MPs that we have. What is their role and what is their impact on the constituency that they are representing? First of all, if we are really to go into the statistics, out of the 40 million Ugandans that we have, 50%, 51% are actually of the working age.
55.
So we are
65.
65? Yes. 65%?
Yes.
So really we have 20 million Ugandans who are of working age or who should be workers. So this is a very big demographic, which I would say is, it is very important that they are well represented. It is very important that they are well represented. So the role of the workers' MP is basically legislation to pass laws that are actually going to help these workers maybe achieve their goals and actually be sound citizens, to get the budget approved that is actually going to benefit them, for oversight to make sure that workers are represented appropriately, that funds are put to workers to make sure that they are getting all the benefits that they deserve, and really for their views, for their representation, for their views to come out, for their needs to be whatever needs they have to actually be met through the workers' MPs. So the question is, the current workers' members of parliament, are they doing all the above? Are they actually advocating for the workers? And to a large extent, I will say, yes, the workers' MPs are doing a good job. We can clearly see recently how the Nssf amendment bill went. We really saw battles, we really saw advocacy, and we really, really have to appreciate the workers' MPs. They did a good job. Yes, the scope and how many people actually benefited is another issue, but at least we saw them actually coming out and saying this is something that our workers need, despite, with the impact of COVID-19, this is something that they really needed, and midterm access was really well represented. We look at the issue of, the deficiencies in the labor laws, or Uganda's labor law. We see the workers' MPs really coming in to look at these particular areas that are, deficient in the labor laws, and really coming in to at least raise awareness and advocate for these glitches to actually be fixed. So the workers' MPs are really doing a good job. Regarding the representation, maybe, my question would be in regards to the appointment or the appointment of the workers' MPs, because this is an electoral college election. It's an electoral college, and the workers' MPs are really voted by an electoral college. And the electoral college, as we have seen, is mostly skewed toward the unionized workers. If we are really to go into the statistics, I would say that the unionized workers are few compared to the non-unionized workers. Whereas you see that non-unionized workers are more. Now the representation of the non-unionized workers is just a fraction of what it should be. So the question is, if you are representing workers, majority of whom are non-unionized, shouldn't the vote really come from, the bigger vote come from the non-unionized workers? That is a question that I would ask. Secondly, an electoral college is small compared to...
So you are raising a concern of fair representation.
Fair representation.
Yes.
Because remember, the workers' MP is supposed to represent the views of their constituency. So if the constituency is, the bigger part of the constituency is not, listened to, then the question is asked, are you actually representing their interests? Yes. And then the other issue maybe that I would bring about is, it is an electoral college kind of election. We would want to see a time to come where we actually have workers actually choose their own representatives. I think that would be a very good way to take it on. We have them directly elect their representatives. First of all, many of the workers' MPs are not known. If you went out there and asked how many workers' MPs do we have, what are they? There are very few people who are actually aware of who the workers' MPs are. There is a connotation that maybe the workers' MPs are more affiliated to the government or to the NRM. And because even if you look at the current members of parliament, workers' members of parliament, I think 3 of them are from the NRM, party. The other 2?
The total number, there are 5.
There are 5. So 3 of them are from the NRM. The other 2 are independent members.
And there come also those of FDC?
That is the question. Because now it shouldn't be about a party. Because what happens is there is a view that the workers' MPs are representing the NRM agenda, or so we should have that separation.
Yes.
There should be that separation such that workers are workers. Yes. Whether they are FDC, whether they are people power, whether they're NRM, the representation has to cut across.
Yes.
Yes. So that is also one thing.
Okay.
By and large, yes, the workers' MPs are doing some bit of work. If we can maybe look into those particular aspects that I have talked about, and maybe get some more guidance from Honorable Biakatonda. Yes.
Wow, this is quite interesting. She has taken us into the real gist of the matter of representation. And before we go for break in the next 3 minutes, I got very much interested to what you talked about, fair representation. And as you come on board, it is a concern, I believe, as I moderate it in the view of also the viewers. Much as it is an electoral college, but the participation seems to be limited. And I don't know whether in that way, the honorable member will tell us whether it has effect with the work that he is supposed to have done best than what he has done. Because there is always room for improvement. And in that, you will be the same person to advocate to see how maybe the involvement of these workers from across the country, and also, especially, the non-unionized workers, which we are even, me in my advocacy, I'm saying that we should indeed have them registered as there is an opening. But now the awareness of this, because we are dealing with the workers, not necessarily those who are graduate certificate holders. I'm doing welder, metal welders, even whether bricklayers, whether those who are in these markets. They have tried to do the good thing, Honorable. The promise I beat them, my hope is not gone. They have tried to come up with so far associations, and they are just transit to unions. So the fair representation, what you've talked about, I think is important. Honorable, you will shed more light on it and give us maybe a promise how we can be represented. Then also the democracy, multi-party democracy. Looking at different political parties in the parliament, and I think to a certain extent, there is a need to consider, equitable representation across political divide. I believe it is an idea, because you can shed more, give us your ideal in this matter, sir.
I want to thank the panelists here, Madame Dorothy. First of all, I think opening remarks were a tick. How I wish they can add us another slot so that she can also come. Because she has really seen the essence of
even for gender, by the way, even for gender, yes.
Balance. We have affirmative action that came up, gave rise to a number of aspects. We have the youth members of parliament, we have the UPDF, the army, we have the people with disabilities, we have the women. All these have laws that govern them. For example, when you talk of people with disability, we are talking about the Disability Act of 2020. It defines clearly who is a person with disability, whose eligibility should be allowed to contest as a workers' member of parliament for people with disability. When you look at the youth, there's what we call the Youth Act.
Do we also have a worker representative?
A workers representative?
Youth, for youth?
Oh, no, of course, I was just general workers, but of course, as affirmative action still, they said at least one of them should be a female representative. Then the rest are free. Even if there are 5 women, they can come. Even if you have people with disability, even if you're lame, even if you have this, like you said, you can come, as long as you meet the criteria for being nomination. So this is the premise on the fact that, one, Uganda is one of the concerns of ILO, and the perceptions about organized labor. And organized labor derives its mandate from a number of ILO conventions and recommendations. Then the other one, I think that's why the framers of the Constitution came up with Article 29, 1E, where they said, right to associations and join union of your choice. So ideally, we are supposed all to be in unions and then maybe haggle for these things. Then of course, some of them are administrative. So I think what we encourage is that everybody, we should encourage organized labor. Why? Organized labor, for example, when you talk of collective bargaining, I talked about the public service negotiating machinery. It allows us to come and actually advocate for our rights, advocate for our welfare, advocate for salary increment. So we would be missing a point if we don't actually use this framework. If it was to be streamlined, it is only the only mechanism which is in the ILO. I quoted that, I think I remember quoting Convention 87. It says the people will be allowed, entitled to a sit-down strike, how it should be done, who should be involved, which notice do you give, and it has a solution to recourse. If it has, all these avenues have not worked and the strike has gone on, how do you really reconcile? How do you carry out arbitration and reconciliation?
Thank you so much.
To address this. So now, to answer Dorothy's question,
yes, sir,
whether the interests are represented, I must say they are represented because it is a right to every worker to unionize under the Constitution, under the ILO conventions, so that at least you can actually move. But I think, like she put it, was a well-thought idea. I must say, we cannot actually say it is actually business as usual. The framers of the Constitution, I think, were clearly aware of, cognizant of the fact that at least they need workers' representation. You find that at least the issues of workers are very unique.
I appreciate for your submission, and in the second, round, we'll go to the in-depth, and we'll be giving you the good thing with you here, our proposals, because this lack of the imbalance in terms of the fair representation, where you find whether it is by magic, whether it's deliberate, you find 3 are NRM and the 2 are independent, also NRM leaning. Yet, even if we didn't bring every political party on board, but at least would have considered like what has ever been considered in the rules of procedure, whether numerical strength, at least to look at which party maybe has more members. I mean, opposition political party, like the leading opposition. We will be going into, this analysis because we are looking at if there is a fair representation, it is for purpose of not just having slots, but to be able to have a section of people who are also, their views are presented. Thank you so much. Stay with us on Smart 24 TV. Please, we would just like to have a commercial break for some few minutes. We'll be coming back. We are still with the Honorable Member of Parliament of, MP's representative for workers. And together with Madam Chomahanj Dorothy, the business management consultant. Please stay tuned on Smart 24 TV. We'll continue together.